I like to think there's CIA agents watching this on their monitoring software.
Well, I hope so. They can do some fucking promotion.
A bunch of agents sat around like, whoa, check these guys out. They're our hardcore followers, man.
Right, Al's back. Let's crack on.
Yeah, sorry, my headphones.
I am seriously thinking that none of my picks have made the top 10.
Everybody, and welcome to the Cacophony Sessions podcast, the show that puts the sick in music. Tonight, I'm your gracious host as we crown our album of the year for 2021. This is the kind of award ceremony the world needs right now. No appearances from Doja Cat and Pharrell Williams. No Jarvis Cocker getting his arse out. No old-timers getting drunk and heckling the presenters. Actually, that's not likely to be true, is it? It's our no-nonsense, lots of arguing, lots of swearing, Season 3 premiere. I've got the group with the scoop with me right here, right now. It's time for one-liners, guys. Alex?
Hey, my name's Microsoft. Can I crash at your place?
Dave?
I don't have one because I haven't looked one up yet. Yeah.
That's good enough.
That'll do. Tom?
Socks before or after trousers, but never socks before pants. That's the rule.
And Martyn?
Hi, I'm Martyn, a.k.a. the Housewife's favourite.
Definitely not.
Yes, I can confirm that. It's the Housewife's choice.
No, the house. Oh, right.
Didn't you have some alternative nicknames that you were working on for us last night, Dave?
I was, yeah. You'll be amazed to hear, even though I looked like I was completely fucked last night, I was actually stone sober.
I wasn't.
So I was working... Yeah, it seemed like everybody else I know wasn't. They were either at parties of people I know or whatever, but I had a couple of glasses of wine and fell asleep with the cat fairly early. But yeah, I was working on a few nicknames. I thought Martyn would be nice to have the housewife choice. I thought Alistair might be nice to be known as the butcher's boy.
I didn't even get it. I was like, what?
Yeah, he's just got the healthy glow of a strong young lad that works.
I'm actually a vegetarian.
Yeah, you've atoned for your sins. The reason I wanted to kind of get some a little bit of morale going is because there are going to be some fights tonight, guys. There's going to be some ruptions in this room because we're going to go through our top 10 albums based on, as we did last year, each of us picking 3 of our favourite albums, and we're going to rank them. We've scored them all out of 10 with our typical point scoring system that we used last time in order to crown the winner of 2021's album of the year. Last year it was Fontaines DC with A Hero's Death, and I've still been listening to that a few times actually. There's still some good tracks on that, and they're back. They've got a new track.
It's
out.
a banger.
Exactly, yeah. That one track is available on Apple Music, but you can on other streams which are less respectable listen to the whole album. But
The new song's fantastic, and I think it's showing a progression in what they're doing. And I mean, I would try and find a copy of the album, but I kind of like the idea of going back to when I was first listening to music, just waiting for it to come out, buy it on vinyl, whack it on, old style.
I mean, there's a few things that have peaked beginning of this year. Like, I've spoken to you guys before. I really, really like a rapper called Koji Radical, he's released a lot of albums on SoundCloud or Digital, but his first release is coming out now in March, which is when my birthday's at. So I've pre-ordered that album. It's his first record deal. I've listened to the first track that's been released called Gangster. It's him sort of parodying the genre and talking about his mum was the gangster, not his estranged father. just her putting food on the table and looking after them and generally being. Like, I really rate him as a rapper, but I'll wait for the whole album to drop. But just like Martyn was saying, I'm quite happy just to wait and get it on physical media and listen to the whole thing once. I'm not in a massive rush. I've waited for this album from this guy because the only thing he picked to wax before that was some like art house vinyl that I bought. But I'm not in a massive rush. I can wait.
Something to look forward to, isn't it, man?
Exactly.
I wasn't that sold on the new track. I think the 2021 was so good for the sort of experimental rock that I think Fontaines pale in comparison. For me, bands like Squid and Lice and Black Country New Road, who've got a new album coming out soon, I think they do what Fontaines and Shane were going for, but better. In my opinion, I like it more.
I don't know if those bands were going for that. I think they were doing their own thing.
Well, yeah, but it's a very similar. It falls within the same genre.
Well, I disagree. See, the fights have started. Come on, I'll fight you.
I also do disagree. I think Squid are fucking shit.
I've never heard of any of them, so even better.
Well, I liked the new Fontaines DC track. It's a bit more poppy than their previous record. They're going in a more accessible direction, I think.
The argument that I'm probably going to pick up in a minute is because one of my nominations is a previous nomination, or one that didn't go there, is we picked up on last year on Fontaines DC because they were doing something that was slightly more intellectual and mature. And I think they're on the downslide, but there's another band which we might talk about later that's on the upslide.
Again, I'll disagree with that, but I agree this band we may talk about, which I hope we do, are on the upslide. But
I think there's not enough in music of this where, like Martyn said, like a lot of these bands are progressing, but really we want them to regress. Like, every time they progress, it usually means they're less like what I liked about them.
Not necessarily.
I don't know. It works both ways. It depends on the band.
Yeah, and it ultimately depends on the album.
I wouldn't want another Radiohead album to sound like Pablo Honey, for instance.
You say that, but if it did...
I don't think Radiohead would. So, speaking of new releases, I mean, Fontaines DC had a new track out. I know one of your favourites, Dave, Muse, they've got a new track out. Bit of a return to form for Muse. They've gone back to their more... it sounds a bit more like Origin of Symmetry. It's more of an alternative rock song. It's called Won't Stand Down. That was good. New Weekend album as well. I was listening to that. I can't get into it as much as After Hours. Everyone's raving about it, but I like the concept. I like the Jim Carrey narration on it.
I was there until it started. Well, my major thing with him is his voice. It's kind of like the same on every single fucking track that he does. But the production was getting me until I think about the third track in, whatever. And I was thinking, this is sounding really Daft Punk. And then when I got halfway through that track, he then started sampling a record that no one else will give a fuck about, but it's like a record I really fucking hold dear. It's an old gospel disco track by Alicia Mayers called I Want to Thank You. And I think it's the 4th or 6th track on that album. As soon as you drop that, I was like, yeah, no. I've had so many people sample that track, like Kanye, Busta Rhymes, whatever people have done a hell of a lot better job they've done that. And when you're on your 4th or 5th track, when he's kind of singing the same,
it is quite samey. It's more up tempo than his other releases, which I kind of dig. But
which is why I was there, because the one previous was just boring on boring, but now it's like slightly up tempo and his voice was samey. So it took me 3 tracks to hate it instead of 1 track.
Well, progress.
So
go on, Tom. I was gonna say that you've got your ear close to the ground at all times. So go on.
I've been a bit slack this year so far, but the new single by a band called Loathe is absolutely fantastic. It's very heavy, but how to describe it? It's very Deftonesy. If you don't know much about metal, if you like Deftones, you'll enjoy Loathe. But it's much cleverer than that. It's got they're quite an experimental band. They released an album in 2021 that was all instrumental electronic, and now they've gone back to having vocals and being heavy again. And I like it a lot. And that's I've listened to that a lot already this year, so I haven't listened to much else. Oh, and I've listened to all the nominations again to make sure I listen to them several times. And I already think I got some of the scores wrong.
There's a couple other rather nice releases as well. I don't know if you know the guy from Years and Years who was starred in Channel 4's This Is a Sin. He's just done an album being released, I think, in the last week or two, where he's kind of the deluxe edition re-releases and re-records some of the old Years and Years stuff that he's done. A fresh album of kind of like electro 80s pop styly shit. So if you haven't listened to that, Dan, I'd give it a roll because it's quite nice.
There's quite a list of stuff that I want to be listening to that's come out this year. Like a band I used to love years ago called Blood Red Shoes have just released a new album that I do need to check out. And then there's some other ones that I have no interest, like both the Lumineers and the Wombats, bands that I went to see in 2005. They've both released albums in the last 10 days, and I'm like, I didn't care about them in 2005. I care about them less now. Actually, the Lumineers are more recent than that. The Wombats are that old, but I didn't care about them then. I still don't care about them now. But
yeah, the Lumineers, you couldn't get me to listen to a record of theirs.
You couldn't pay me enough to even listen to a note of theirs. I hate them that much. I despise them.
Prime example of the kind of stuff from the mid-2000s that I didn't like.
Fucking man bun music. I hate it so
They're
much.
more recent than that. I thought they were older, but they haven't actually been going quite that long.
They're actually... I just want to say about the Lumineers, I hope if they ever come across this, you're fucking disgusting and you should all burn in hell, and I never want to hear anything you ever make again. Sorry, rant over.
Martyn, what have you been doing? Cycling around, working?
No, the opposite. Right, so I've worked myself into the ground over Christmas. I literally burnt out, and I had a couple of days off. And on my second day off, I did a PCR test that came out positive. So I've been isolating a week, and I've hated every second of it. I thought at first I was like, "Oh, this is great! I can get loads of work done on music." So I've got to come up with some parts for my band and stuff. But I just couldn't get the motivation, so I ended up just watching loads of like foreign language films and that. I got into a load of Michael Haneke and Denis Villeneuve's early stuff, which is fantastic, but it's not like viewing it. So I became more and more depressed and less motivated.
Before we get too far into this, and I think it's going to be the case, I think this is the case for the whole of the fucking year, Martyn. Because what everybody's sitting at home, being isolated, not able to kind of experience life and be with all the people that they're musically able to be with, makes a kind of bad year.
Yes, I agree. I didn't realise how bad it was, actually.
Because it seems on paper to be perfect for a musician. You know, just see how isolated and but no. You need to fucking experience shit.
Yeah, I could see why people were drinking a lot. When lockdown first started in 2020, I mean, I didn't drink anything over the week. I mean, I didn't go out. But like, I could see, even just from my 1 week of isolation, I could see the impact that would have on people's mental health over a longer period of time. Like 6 months in isolation, it's no wonder people were going mental.
Yeah, it's cabin fever. Cabin fever is not a great place to have an album. No one's going to write a great album snowed in, going mental.
I'm an outdoorsman as well. I don't like being indoors. So, like, I'm seeing the sunshine outside and going, I've just bought a new camera as well. I've got this, off a mate of mine, I bought a full camera setup, tripod, really top-of-the-range camera and stuff.
That's actually when I talk to people that are not interested in music, because I was saying, we're doing this album of the year, so I think, it should be amazing this year, shouldn't it? No. It seems like, obviously not the catalyst for artistic flair is being locked down and never seeing another human being and being half fucked the entire time.
Yeah, totally.
I think it depends on what. So for this 2021 just gone, I think certain genres did really well last year and certain genres did badly. So for me, I think it was a fantastic year because the genres that I like. Post-rock, you've got the guy Scale and Feather who was releasing like an album every month.
Those guys probably they're great with introspective sort of. Well, they're kind of shoegazy.
They probably have a full home studio setup as well, you know, which
exactly.
a lot of people don't have.
Excel on their own. They're not guys which are going out to experience nuance to come back and write something about it. They're quite happy to be on their own doing whatever.
And where do you get your inspiration from if you can't go out? I mean, where do you get your inspiration from when you're stuck in between four walls? You know what I mean?
I've done all right with YouTube.
Yeah, the hub.
But like as a musician, like I get my inspiration from real life, and what I experience in real life. And if I'm not out experiencing it, I've got nothing coming in, so I've got nothing to output.
Yeah, picture paints 1,000 words, and experience paints 1,000 pictures.
Totally. No one wants to hear about my room in music form, in Discord and fucking feedback form.
I thought this year was better than last year,
I
personally.
totally disagree. Well, we're all going to disagree on stuff.
I did not think that one fucking bit.
But there's a tidal wave of disagreement coming. We're still being cordial at this point. What have you been doing with yourself, Alex?
What haven't I been doing?
We don't want to know that.
Nothing really. Other than listening to all these albums and working, I haven't really been up to much. It's been, obviously we haven't seen each other since Christmas. Christmas was good, New Year's was pretty good. Went over fries and got absolutely bollocked.
I've never been that drunk in my life.
It was pretty good. He was a right state, but to be fair, we all were.
I don't remember the last 3 hours of the evening at all.
Yeah, that was all right. And then since then, just going to work. I started a new shift at work, so I get 3 days off a week, which is really nice.
And you get your weekends back.
I do get my weekends back, so that's actually really, really nice. Although I found out I get paid 40 quid every Sunday, as part of my Sunday bonus. I've lost 40 quid a week, but it's worth every fucking penny. But yeah, other than that, just listening to music. Some of it good, some of it bad. We shall see which is which in a minute.
Yeah, we've had a lot of listening to do. There were 15 albums in total on offer, with 3 from each of us. So it's been a lot. It's been an intensive review period for me. I'm now at the point where I'm just randomly rating everything out of 10. So far, this podcast is a light 6, but we're hoping it's going to get better. I've also written an article for the blog, so if you go to cacophonisessions.wordpress.com, you can see my entire 25 most played songs of 2021, which I think would work as a perfect accompaniment to this episode. If you just can't get enough of us and want some more shit music recommendations, go and read that afterwards.
I mean, that's obviously the case. Of course they want more.
Yeah, we're like the Pringles of podcasts. Once you pod, you can't stod.
Wrong. Yeah, exactly like that, Dan.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that one. If you have any suggestions, why don't you hit us up on Twitter at CAC Sessions Pod. We're also on Facebook, the Cacophony Sessions Podcast on Facebook. We're all over social media. We want to hear from you. Give us a review. Give us whatever you can. Spread the word out there. The Cacophony Sessions 2022. We're taking over. In music news, I couldn't let this moment pass without paying tribute to Meat Loaf, who died this weekend. I know that there are some people on this episode who maybe aren't Meat Loaf fans. I'm going to go out there and say that Dave, Martyn, and Tom probably actively despise Meat Loaf.
Only his music.
I like him as an actor. I just don't like him as
His
a
name is Robert Paulson.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
Really nice guy, I bet, as well.
The unfortunate circumstances surrounding his death and him being an anti-vaxxer do kind of cast a bit of a sour light on it all. But as I said on Twitter, the people do have stupid opinions and do irresponsible things, but we should be looking at where this information's coming from. And maybe not tarnishing somebody's legacy by virtue of them being an anti-vaxxer, which is a heinous position to take. Don't get me wrong, but where's this information coming from? They're obviously getting this bullshit from somewhere, and those are the people at fault. We shouldn't let it tarnish the legacy of a decent musician, more than a decent musician. He worked with some of the best. Todd Rundgren, Jim Steinman was pivotal in his career. Wrote some amazing songs. They're very melodramatic, and they're not for everyone, but I certainly love that kind of style.
That's because he didn't have the personality to carry them off, so he kind of searched for Marvin, that's his name.
Marvin Lee Adair, yeah. Well, or his name was Robert Paulson. It's been quite funny to watch because you've got people paying earnest tribute on social media, and it's full of comments saying his name is Robert Paulson. And people are going, no, it was Marvin Lee Adair, just really like Honestly, and they don't seem to be realizing that it's a Fight Club reference, and it winds them up, so they start having these arguments about what his real name was.
It becomes a Fight Club.
It's a respectful tribute. They're just paying respect to his role in Fight Club. So yeah, great film, great book. Just to get it out there. But I loved Meat Loaf. Bat Out of Hell was one of the records that my dad used to play in the car all the time, so I know that album front to back. Bat Out of Hell 2 is actually a return to form in '93. I know I Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That is quite a memey song now, and it doesn't really get a lot of respect. If you listen to the whole 12 minutes, if you've ever got the time to just listen to that, it's just so preposterous it works. There's some good stuff up until Bat Out of Hell 3, really. I quite liked his version of It's All Coming Back to Me Now, which was made famous by Celine Dion, but his version's good with Marion Raven. Meat Loaf, absolute legend. For crying out loud, Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through, Life is a Lemon, I Want My Money Back. There's some really good songs worth checking out from Meat Loaf. Anyway, that's enough about the past. It's time to talk about the past, but the more recent past, which was 2021.
Well, technically it's less recent because he died later than we scored
you
this.
You had to ruin it, Al.
That's why they call me pedantic Al.
I didn't think it was going to be you. I didn't think you'd let me down like that.
Sour-faced butcher.
Let's get fighting, because it's time for the 2021 Cacophony Sessions Album of the Year.
Ding, ding, ding.
What we're going to do is, much like last year, the guys don't know how their records have fared, or the three that they've nominated. So it is a surprise to everyone but me. I feel before we get into the list and how everything has fared, I did want to just go round and say which album was your personal favourite album of the year, and which album do you think the group will vote to be the album of the year before we do any of the scores, before we reveal anything. Let's start with David, if you would like to, sir. What was your favourite album from the records that we've just listened to?
My personal favourite, if I was to be put to the grindstone, would be my Mad Lib suggestion.
What do you think's going to win it?
I think Little Sims, I might be introverted. And I also, if my head was put to the grindstone, might put that ahead of my own suggestion, which wasn't my pick. So I put Mad Lib forward as my favourite, with Little Sims is what I think I'm going to win. But at a push, I might put favourite Little Sims, going to win Little Sims.
Tom?
So my favourite was the Sugar Horse, The Live Long After. It's probably my second favourite album of all time. It just really resonated with me. It won't even make the top 10 because I know Dan will have given it probably a 0. Dave will probably have given it somewhere like that as well. But it's a brilliant album. I think Failure will win. I think it has the same as the Fontaines DC factor last year, where no one will hate it, and it will score 7s or above across the board, and then it will hit the top spot. So I think Failure will win.
Alex?
Yeah, okay, so my favourite album was the NoFX album I put forward, single album. I just really liked NoFX, and I thought it was a pretty good album for them. It seemed a bit more mature lyric-wise than a lot of their previous stuff. I don't think I'm like Tom Doubt. I don't know, it might get top 10. I don't know. Meltdown, I have no idea. That was my favourite. What I think will win, I'm probably with Tom. I think Failure probably will. Exactly for the same reason. I just think no one is going to hate it. So it'll at least get top 5 because of that. So that's kind of it, really. Maybe the Shame album, maybe we could get number 1.
Martyn?
Well, obviously Failure, but I personally I'm not sure it'll make the top 10. I just think they're just an old band, and because I'm obsessed with them at the moment, I think it's just my thing, but it'd be nice if they did. But I've got 2 predictions, and I'm split equally between them. It's either Turnstile or Sugar Horse, but then I'm kind of biased because I fucking love those albums, and I'm predicting them because maybe I kind of hope one of those wins.
None of us can say anything because it will give away what it is, like what our scores are now. So we've just got to go.
Only
okay.
Dan knows.
Yeah, only Dan knows.
I know. It's a great feeling of power.
Right, should we turn off?
We're your simps now, Dan.
Well, Dan, what was your favourite album, man? You obviously can't tell us what you think will win, but...
It's got an absolute 2-inch diamond cutter boner right now. It's got something over all of us.
I'm just sat here bricked up, you know. My favourite of the albums, and I don't think this will be a surprise to anyone, because I've raved about it on previous episodes of the podcast, but my favourite album of the year was the Silk Sonic album, An Evening with Silk Sonic. We'll get into this.
Yeah, we'll get into this.
Your prediction?
All I'm going to predict is that there are going to be some arguments tonight,
Oh,
guys.
no.
Oh,
Luckily,
lovely.
we are all seeing
Lovely.
each other next week, so
We can fight it out
whatever
physically.
happens.
Should I have a quick vodka just so I'm in my arguing mood?
Well, that's what's important. As long as I can land a square, honest punch on someone's chin, that's
Kick
what's
to the
important.
balls, man, every time.
So, in at number 10. In at number 10 was the third studio album by American indie rock band Really From. It was released by Top Shelf Records on March 12, 2021. It's the band's first album under their current name. They were previously called People Like You. It's one of Tom's picks. I scored it at 6.9. I really enjoyed it. It's got some really decent songs on there. I like Quirk. I like I Live Here Now. I like In the Spaces. There are some good moments on the album. It's quite varied. It's almost jazzy in places, with an indie sound to it too. Matt Hull is the trumpet player. He's killing it. There's some great moments. There's some bad moments. They finished with a demo called The House, which I don't know why they just didn't finish that track. It just sounds weird in the format that it's presented in. I enjoyed it. And Tom, yeah, tell us more.
This band come from the same sort of school of indie music as American football. They're a group of musicians who've clearly met at, I think it's either Berkeley or Juilliard, I forget which one. And they're all insanely good at what they do. Like the drummer's amazing, the guitarist's very good, the brass player's very good. They don't have a bass guitar for most of it. It's all done on keys. There are a couple of songs where when they were People Like You, they had a bass guitarist who left, who now produces this album, and they've got a female keyboard player who sings and plays most of the bass on that. I think if we want to go for clever lyrics, this album, of all of the nominations, has probably the most clever lyrics of all of them. It's all about cultural identity, and like the reason they changed their name to Really From is because they got fed up with being asked where they were really from. Because the guitarist is Mexican American, the female keyboard player is Japanese American, the drummer's mixed race, and yeah, they're just fabulous musicians writing good songs, and I love this album. It's actually my least favourite of my 3 picks, and it will be the only one that's in the top 10, I guarantee you. But it's a very, very, very good album.
2 people scored it the least are Dave and Martyn. So, Dave, Martyn, tell us what you didn't like about this album.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of Vangelis, the kind of Blade Runner soundtrack. But they were just a little bit too try-hard for me. As Tom said, yeah, the college kids or music students or whatever. I'm sure what they're doing were musically sound and technically good. It was just, it reminded me too much of the sort of Blade Runner soundtrack, and it wasn't electronic enough for my tastes, and unfortunately we're into the creme de la creme, and you had to score some higher and lower than others, so that was my opinion with Really From. Martyn, carry on.
Something that I only just really picked up on, and like it's the reason I didn't like it. Like Tom said, it's really well made. They're great songs. Every musician is incredible. But the fact that they all met at music college, it's kind of like, it sounds like a music college project where they're all put together. It's like, you've got to record an album to pass your music degree or whatever, and that's what they put out. For me, it it didn't connect with me in any way. But that said, when I was listening to it, I was like going, that's some fucking incredible musicianship. But I was like, it's kind of very sixth form to me. It didn't connect with me in any way. And I really didn't like her vocals. But then her vocals are perfect for what they are, for what she's trying to sing. But I don't like that style of vocals. I don't enjoy that style of vocals. It is just not something I like. It's almost like too perfect. There's no real humanity to it. It's almost like,
edge.
You know, when you watch an orchestra, everybody's playing something that's written down in front of them. There's not really any emotion coming out of it other than what the composer intended. And it's kind of like that for me. I've got nothing bad to say about it. It just isn't for me. It doesn't connect with me in any way.
Al, you seem like you're in a good mood tonight. You scored this a 7.8.
I don't know. I found myself like when I first started listening. First I thought his vocals were shocking. Like genuinely, he was crap.
They grow on you though.
But they did grow. They did grow. Yeah.
I preferred his vocals.
Yeah, they did grow on me. And funnily enough, you say about the demo song at the end. That was one of my favourite songs. But you know me,
I like that one.
I like Shed Rock, so you know.
But, we all love Shed Rock.
I actually listened to this album because I was a bit pressed for time trying to finish them all. So I was actually listening to this whilst doing my weekly shop at Lidl's. So just going around my headphones on, and the album repeated like twice whilst I was doing it, whilst I was getting in the car and all that. And I didn't really notice until track 2 on the repeat. I was like, oh, I've actually heard all this. But I've kind of found it just charming. I think that's the word I would use to describe this album, where I found it just charming. Like, I didn't dislike any of it, and I guess because I got a bit more of a second listen, I found myself... there's obviously some albums that growers, and I feel this one is a grower, but it grows at a quicker rate than most other albums would, if you see what I mean. Like, I found myself really getting on board of it in the end, and like even the lyrics, you know, where he's talking about like his mum and dad and all that stuff. The problem is like this is like sixth form, like Martyn would say, but when it finished, I still found myself liking it. So it's one of those albums where I wasn't sure what I was drawn to most, but I just found myself by the end of it just quite enjoying it and finding it charming. That was basically it.
For me, I find the brass is what really draws me into it. Like the brass player, he doesn't just play trumpet, he plays trombone and French horn and everything. And so you've got the guitarist playing simple finger-picking stuff most of the time, and then you've got this drummer who plays insane rhythms.
That's one thing I was going to say. The drummer was amazing.
He's amazing.
He was by far the glue that held all together, because like you said, like the guitar was playing quite simple stuff, and I think the trumpets and all that stuff was, for what it could have been, was quite understated, because it was a bit more of a jazzy sort of like, you know,
it's icing on the
listening. Yeah, but I felt the drumming really filled all the gaps that would have been there, and I thought it was fantastic.
I mean, it's like listening to an album of drum fills, except that it doesn't sound like that. He varies the beat and goes on, and it plays on beat and off beat, and it's really, really well done.
It flows very nicely. A lot of bands, when they do offbeat stuff, it sounds very abrasive and quite janky, and I usually don't quite like that, but I felt like they had a very good fluid flow because of him, and I think that's probably why it held together. If it was an average drummer playing on this album, I think I may not have liked it that much.
I probably agree.
It kind of added the level of... there was enough on this where it felt like Martyn said, like naive young people writing music, but I think he brought a lot more of the musicality to it, where it didn't feel that way to me. It kind of pushed it over the edge. So, I don't know. I think that might be what it is. I thought it was good. I really liked it.
I love it.
It was a good album.
In my car
it was a great album. It was just, I didn't emotionally connect with it. That was all.
I 100% get why someone wouldn't think it's that good. I 100% get it, but it managed to fall on the right side of the fence for me. Unlike a few of them.
I've actually listened to it twice. I listened to it earlier in the year. The second time round, I enjoyed it, but it lacks that familiarity to really score any higher than a 6.9 for me. To really get into the upper echelons of where we're ranking these albums. None of the tracks really stuck with me enough for it to be a certified banger, but it was good. We'll move on. And proving that there is no bias, in 9th place, it was the debut album from Silk Sonic.
What?
An Evening with Silver Sonic, released on November 12th, 2021 by Aftermath Entertainment and Atlantic Records. It was the album on which Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak combined together. They recruited American musicians Bootsy Collins. By virtue of just seeing his name on the track listing, I was already sold. And then to drop Thundercat on bass on After Last Night as well. It's a really good record. It's only 31 minutes long. And I think that does hold it back because it doesn't really go in too deeply in any direction. But for what it does have, all the songs are really meticulously produced. They're catchy. Bruno Mars's vocals are out of this world, especially on the last track, Blast Off. He keeps getting higher and higher into the stratosphere. It's incredible. The singles were great. Leave the Door Open was my favourite record of last year. Skate was great. Smoking Out the Window, they've got these retro vibes. There's some choral electric sitar reminiscent of the stylistics on Skate, which is also disco inspired. It's just a brilliant record. I scored it a 9.1. It's one of my favourite records of the last 5 years. That I don't give 9 out of 10 a lot. So that just goes to show how popular this record was with me. But its lowest score was from Al, who scored it a 4.8.
Because it was shit. Bootsy Collins doesn't make it automatically good, and it wasn't.
I agree with that statement, Al.
Apparently Bootsy Collins can make loads of duffs, apparently, because that was shit. The fucking backslap fest, the fucking backslap fest that album was fucking horrific. I can almost feel them like wanking each other off as they were singing. Isn't this amazing? Yeah, it is.
If this was just another Bruno Mars release, I probably wouldn't dig it half as much. And the reason for that is because Anderson .Paak is almost rapping on these songs. He's not quite, and he is in places, but he's got this very percussive style to his singing, accentuating the rhythm rather than the melody that Bruno Mars is handling. And they don't have that on other records. They don't have a quote unquote rapper on the old soul records. So I think that does mean it is different in places, and I can see what it offers to the world of soul. And because of that, I think it's a winner. Tom, you're chomping at the bit to say.
Yeah, so interestingly, like, I don't have loads to say about this. I mean, in retrospect, I think I scored this too high. However, the reason...
Scored it a 6.
Yeah, I scored it a 6. I listened back to it. The first half of the album, I don't like. But the last 3 tracks, I like. And so it's at 777, it suddenly went, okay, I can dig this now. But it was like, this album, is it track 2 is just like backslapping each other, you know?
Yes.
I hated that. I think they wasted Bootsy Collins, and I think they completely wasted Thundercat, who is like this insane bass player who plays the most insane bass I've ever seen. And they waste him.
I don't think they do. I think After Last Night with Thundercat, that bass is grooving. That whole song kicks.
It's not at the level of technicality I've come to expect from his solo stuff, which is what I love listening to. I like the technicality of his playing, and this doesn't show that in the full effect in the same way as his solo work does. So I feel they waste him. But the reason I scored it as high as I did is on 777, it kicks in with that sort of the really compressed, distorted guitar part, and it lifts up a beat, because this album actually isn't that positive and upbeat. Like, Leave the Door Open's quite maudlin, and it's all quite downbeat, and then 777 kicks it up a gear, and then although like Skate isn't that upbeat, it's got a slightly more upbeat sound to it than like Smoking Out the Window.
Skate is a grower. I didn't like it at first, but
that
it's
one,
really
I liked that one quite quickly. I mean, I've just got to say, the lyrics that Bruno Mars sings in Smoking Out the Window are utter bollocks, right?
I think they're quite funny.
Yeah,
in general, that's what I didn't like the most on this album. I can appreciate musicianship, but like, nothing about his lyrics make me like him in the slightest.
No.
Like, my eyes were rolling a lot during this album.
But although the lyrics are generally rubbish, I think Bruno Mars's vocal performance is very good. I think the production on it is very polished. A little bit too Disney on the first half of the album, but the last half of the album...
I like Disney.
I know you do. The last half of the album picks up a bit, and I think that this was the lowest score I gave anything. And I think it says something like last year I was giving like 1s and 2s. And this year, I think the standard of what we've picked in general is higher than what we picked last year, because I couldn't find any album that I absolutely hated and never want to hear again. I've listened to all these albums 4 or 5 times each, and I think, admittedly, this album scored high because it finished strong. If you took the last 3 tracks off, I would have dropped it down to like it was probably around a 3 or a 4 until the last half of the album, and that lifted it. I like the last 3 tracks. I've listened to 777 for pleasure since, so like it's doing something. It's doing something right. It's doing 1 track right, and that's all it needed to get a 6.
I found this year was less divisive than last year, but because of that, I feel like there was a lot more middle of the road stuff, and I think this may have been one of those ones. Like, it's not that bad. It just got a lower score for me because, I thought
it was great. I just thought it was a fun album to listen to. I just liked it. I just thought the musicianship was great. That's all I cared about, really. If I was your guys' age, right, because I'm the old boy here, and I'd listen to this, and I fucking love this, I'd want to go back and listen to Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye and stuff that they've obviously pulled from, which is always a good thing, in my opinion.
In 8th place, with 34.1 points, it's a studio album by American musician Madlib. The album is called Sound Ancestors. It was released on January the 29th, 2021 via Madlib Invasion. It's one of his few actual solo releases that he's actually just put out as a Madlib album. Mostly he's done stuff with other artists in collaboration, such as Mad Villainy with MF Doom. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 7. It's a more instrumental hip-hop album. It's mainly about the samples as opposed to any kind of rhyming and flow. But it takes you to some really interesting places. It's quite varied. You've got some homages to the likes of Jay Dilla, especially in the way he makes his delayed beats. Dilla was famous for delaying the snare on a beat, and you can hear a lot of that on this album. There's some 80s sounding kind of more straightforward hip hop bits, and there's a very interesting Spanish turn on Latino Negro, which really has a cool extended fade out that they keep teasing you with. I really enjoyed that track. Dave, this was your choice. You gave it a 9, so and I think you said earlier this may be your favourite album of the year. So tell us a bit about what this album meant to you in 2021.
So his next pick is my pick is Madlib. This album Sound Ancestors came out this year. It's kind of like an amalgamation of some stuff he's done over the last few years. Apparently he says he's got enough material now to release an album every year for the next 10 years or something. But he's got this incredible backlog of stuff that he's kind of amalgamating Prince style into albums, so it makes cohesive sense. But yeah, Sound Ancestors was a really good album. It's just instrumental hip hop. There is some kind of like backing vocals or like ethereal vocal noise on it, but it's mainly sort of like a higher consciousness, sort of conscious rap style album. But he's worked on lots of other people's albums in the past. Kendrick Lamar with To Pimp a Butterfly, Quasimoto, which is a Stones Throw artist, MF Doom, I'm sure that was going to detail who he is, Guilty Simpson, lots and lots and lots of people over the years. It's kind of like a legendary hip-hop producer, and it's good to see one of these old guys go in a more sort of, sentient direction, with more sort of conscious, intelligent hip-hop. And it's much more musical than most of his previous offerings. So yeah, real great album.
I totally agree with that. I am absolutely fucking bored of rap. I find most rap at the moment, I sound like an old boy, but I find most rappers these days, it's just dull, right? But then I'm an early 90s, late 80s hip-hop fucking head. And I listened to this, and it reminded me of when I got into like the likes of DJ Shadow, obviously, and Quantum and Solar Sides and all that stuff. And it was about, like you said, Dave, exactly that. Hip hop producers who don't need rappers, and I think that is a fucking talent to hold your attention with decent samples, decent production, decent beats, and not needing a rapper. But the sounds are so interesting. Shadow's the obvious touchstone. He's quite a cliche to talk about, but I listened to I gave it quite a high score. I can't remember what I gave it now, but
7. You scored it a 7.
Because I'm so bored of rap, I was like, I'm going into this. I really hope the rap is good. But there wasn't any, and I was like, fucking hell, this is nice, man. And it just totally reminded me of when I was into, just the mixtapes by Shadow and people like that, and, like the 4-track era. And it's just really nice to hear. It's craftsmanship.
What's interesting with this album is it is actually a collaboration. It's a collaboration with Kieran Hebden, who is Fortet.
Yeah, Fortet. Fucking hell, man.
Yes, he produced it.
Yeah, and you can hear his hallmarks on a lot of it, and that's so.
It's amazing. Worth exploring.
Fortet is amazing.
Yeah, incredible.
Fortet is beautiful. Anything he's done. He was in a band called Fridge before, who released a fantastic album.
Hey, Tom, did you hear his collaboration with Burial and Tom York recently? Last year, I think. Amazing.
Yeah, really good. This album is an album of moments, and I loved the intro, and I really enjoyed the first track, The Call. I really liked that. And then it completely lost me for quite a while. And then I think it got me back again around. There was like a couple of bits where I was like, oh, parts of Loose Goose sound like it would fit on the GTA 4 soundtrack, and I was like, okay, that's cool. And then there were moments that I liked. But it's all a bit too laid back. And then all of a sudden, there's that one for Quartabe or Quartabe. I was like, okay, that's come back in again. That's really good. And then, like 2 for 2 has a really cool brass part. And then there's the flamenco guitars on Latino Negro. And then there's the Fortet. Fortet has this sort of trademark like xylophone thing going on, and that's on Hot Rock. And it's those moments that I really enjoyed. What I find weird about this album is, apart from The Call, probably, the tracks don't really work as individual tracks. It works better as a whole album. But I think there are moments where the album, and there are some brilliant bits in it, but I think there are moments where the album loses me. But when it gets me, I can really appreciate what's going on in it. So I think I gave it a 6.8.
There is one person in this chat who doesn't agree that this was a good album.
No, there is.
I believe tonight he's going by the pseudonym of The Butcher's Boy. Scored it a 4.3. Why?
Well, I for one would have liked a bit of rapping on it, because for me it was just a compilation of fucking lift music. I thought it was fucking shit, and I don't think it was an entire album. It felt like an entire album of random tracks with ambient wank between it. But to be fair, a lot of the ambient stuff was all right. And it's just, I was just listening to it going, when is the song going to start? Is there a song? There isn't going to be any songs. It feels like that free music you get off YouTube, it just feels like the licensed free music. I don't know. Everyone's talking about it. I was like, what are you guys even on about? It was all right. It was just, I don't know. I didn't have strong enough emotions or any of it. I didn't hate any of it, but I don't know. It just felt like there's nothing I felt like I could latch onto in any of it. I think this is one of those ones where it's a genre issue for me, where, like, if you guys appreciate that type of music, you're going to like it more. But I just thought it was dull as dishwater, to be honest. Which is harsh, I know, but some of the beats was nice. And to be honest, I thought it would work better as a soundtrack to a film in bits of it, But just as a listening experience, I had a harder time with it, 4.3 was probably a bit harsh, but it was also one of those ones where, once you get the gradients, I was talking about this, you get which ones you prefer compared to other songs, or other albums, and then at some point you go, well, this got a 7, so this means this has got to get at least a 6. This one was one of those ones where I was like, okay, I enjoyed this less than this, so it's now got to go this low.
It does become comparative, yeah.
Yeah. It's actually weird, because last year, my lowest score was a 6, I think, so this year I'm already beating myself.
We'll move on. Scoring 35.1 points and coming in 7th position is As the Love Continues, the 10th studio album by Scottish post-rock band Mogwai. An album that came out on the 19th of February 2021. It also topped the UK album charts the first week it came out. The band themselves described that as a moment being totally surreal.
I scored this album fairly well, but it is Mogwai's worst album. Hands down, by a long way, it's their worst album.
That's your opinion, man.
That's like your opinion, man.
I've loved Mogwai since I got given a copy of Young Team on cassette. First album's called Young Team in 1997, and it sounded like nothing else at the time. And I've seen them live a few times, and they're absolutely fantastic. This album, compared to the rest of their output, is comparatively boring. But there are moments on it that I know that Martyn would love. And the thing is, I still scored it quite well because it's a genre of music that I really like and I can get into. So I still, don't get me wrong, I don't dislike this album because everything Mogwai do, there's like a base level. Mogwai will never release anything that will score lower than a 7 with me because it will always sound a bit like Mogwai and I'll always get into it. But this one, like, Young Team is a 10 out of 10 album. Like, Come On Die Young, Mr. Beast, Hawk is Howling, these are like 9 out of 10 albums. This is comfortably in the 7s.
I gave it a 7.9.
You scored it higher than I did.
I was really surprised by how good this was. It was far more varied than I imagined it to be, being post-rock. I definitely heard a lot of talk kind of moments in there from the likes of Laughing Stock, that kind of stuff. But there's even some Kanye kind of stuff in there with Here We Go Forever.
You should go back and dig out some of Mogwai's older stuff. It's
I've downloaded Young Team, and
Young Team is very different to this album. If you liked this album, you probably really like Hardcore Will Never Die, But You Will, which I think it does what this album does, but better, in my opinion.
With Mogwai, I mean, I went through a period of massively loving post-rock, and it was when I got into like Mogwai, Seuros, and like Explosions in the Sky and stuff. But my problem with post-rock these days, it's kind of, I find it quite overblown now, and I don't really listen to it much. Mogwai are pretty much the only post-rock band I still listen to on the regular. I will choose to listen to Mogwai. But one of the...
I think they say on the reg.
Piri piri chicken leg. But anyway, like...
Okay.
Anyway, I think Mogwai much like...
That's T-shirt.
Mogwai, much like my other... my favourite band at the moment, they're one of those bands who have gradually progressed, and they started out with what they had, and with each progressive album, they've developed with not just their songwriting, their musical skills, but also their production values, adding extra sounds and stuff. And with each album, for me personally, I think Mogwai have got better and better. Although I will agree with Tom in a sense, I think Hardcore Will Never Die is probably my favourite Mogwai album of all. I just fucking love it. But what I really love about Mogwai is they started out with like this big grandiose, wall of sound building thing, which I love. But gradually they've just introduced more and more kind of like, not only the electronic elements, but just standard songwriting. And I think on this album, like Richie Sacramento is such a great example of that. It's just a straight up shoegaze song. It's a standard shoegaze rock song. They've
always thrown in like one song with singing at least on every album.
But it's not just that, it's about the tempo as well. I mean, they'll throw in, they've started doing more like with each album, doing more songs where it's just a straight 3.5 minute verse, chorus song. But they do it in such a way that they still hold on to the sounds that they started out with. They've never lost track of what they did in the very beginning. There's always elements of that in what they're doing now. But yeah, this album broke my heart. I heard it and I was like, fuck me. I hadn't listened to Mogwai for a while.
It was a very important moment when that made number one. It felt, for those of us who've like plugged away in the post-rock furrow for like 20 years, or more than that, actually, it was really nice to see other people go, actually, this genre that we've talked about, like the post-rock is a pejorative term coined in 94. It was quite nice to have that become mainstream. So I think it was a very important moment. Like I say, I don't love it as much as I love any of their other albums.
I do. I remember Actually, one of the defining moments for the album for me was actually not listening to the album, but a mate of mine messaged me. He's like, "Put Six Music on now," and I was like, "Okay." And they were doing a session for Six Music, and they played Richie Sacramento, and I think it was Lauren Laverne was presenting. It was her show. It was in the morning, and when they finished, you could hear her audibly like emotional about it, and I was like, my mate was like, Lauren Laverne crying, lol, and all this, and it's like, but the point was, it was like having Mogwai in the studio because they're such a monolithic band. They're kind of like legendary. It's like people say, you've either heard of them or you haven't, and if you've heard of them, you've either listened to them or you haven't, and it's like kind of, they're just one of those bands that I don't know, they will go down in music history as like really important. So it's really nice that this year they got a number one album. Fucking good luck to them.
Made me cry too. I swear I did like some albums.
I was about to say, I think there's a bit of a theme tonight because someone didn't like it. Scoring this one even lower than Madlib, scored 4.2. Al,
I had to add the 0.2 because I thought 4 was too harsh. I thought if I put a decimal in, I might get decimated less.
Your opinion's still valid, Aldo. We've got to have both sides of this coin.
I could not stand this album. I thought it was straight up shite. Like when Tom says, "Oh, they usually put a song with singing in," and I'm like, "Why didn't you have your album like that? It was the best song." I don't know.
I find the singing usually the weakest part of the album. This is the first album where it wasn't.
I don't know. I think I just don't like the genre. I think that's my issue with this. I don't like ambient music, I guess. It's just something I'm not into. I find it tedious, and it is somehow for me, it's just comes off as the most pretentious shit ever, but it's probably not, but I just have a really hard time with it. Like, every time I listen, every track, I'm like, okay, that was another one I had to get through. And then you start another one, and it starts off just slow and fucking plodding as you, and I'm just like, oh, God. At the end when you go, it can't be, it's not as bad as I think it is. I know it's not. But unfortunately, I'm scoring for myself, so I've got to like, the only reason I got a 4 is because I thought I was just missing something. I could have gone lower. I really did like it. I'm sorry.
I want to make a prediction about bands like Mogwai. I think bands like Mogwai probably appeal to, I bet, the majority of fans of bands like Mogwai, I'm not just saying just them, are probably guitar players or maybe bass players.
I think so. To me, it seems like arts. It seems like art student music.
I get that totally, because that's how I see a lot of modern post rock. Is kind of quite nerdy.
I can only just about play a G chord on a guitar.
You wrote a song called G,
this.
man.
Yes, and that was not through choice.
That was a beautiful song.
Through limitations. That's why you don't drink 2 bottles of wine before you come to rehearsal, Martyn.
Well, yeah, there is that.
Because G will happen. So I can't play anything on the guitar, and I really liked it. So I don't think that point stands up. I really enjoyed it.
Probably because you could have played it.
Well,
turn the amps up high enough, probably could.
I was living vicariously.
It's like they play like fucking pedal roulette when they write a song, isn't it? Let's just like strum a fucking note and then just hit pedals and then release it. Done.
Well, it works for me.
I don't know.
That's been my modus operandi for years, man.
yeah, that is how Martyn plays guitar.
Yeah. This is one of those ones where, like, one after the other, you guys going, yeah, it's really great, all these layered tones. And I'm like, oh, God, at some point they have to get to me.
In 6th place, with 36.5. Now, this is a band that we have talked about on the podcast before. They released their second studio album this year on the 15th of January 2021 through Dead Oceans, and they are post-punk band Shame. Now, this was produced by James Ford of Simian Mobile Disco, who
Amazing.
produced Jessie Ware's What's Your Pleasure last year, which I didn't get the chance to talk about enough. This was their second album. We talked about their first album a little bit on one of the episodes last year. Dave, I'm going to let you take this one. You've nominated it, and you rated it very, very highly. You scored it a 9. It's called Drunk Tank Pink. Give us the lowdown.
Really good album. I mean, this is mine and Martyn's one of our favourite bands. They lost out narrowly to Fontaines DC, our album of the year 2021. But one of the criticisms we had for the band was that they were a bit juvenile. I think we said that if we're talking about punk terms rather than post-punk terms, they're Shame were a little bit more like the Sex Pistols. Fontaines were a little bit more like the Clash. They're a little bit more mature. But this latest offering from them, I think, should really be considered, because all the criticisms we had for them in their first album, they've addressed in this, and this is a much more grown-up album, talking about things like addiction and mental health and anxiety, depression, and all the pressures of fame and the things that they've experienced while touring pretty much non-stop until they hit the pandemic and then were on shut-ins. But yes, it's a great album. Something I've enjoyed listening to, and I still put them ahead of a lot of bands. They're still young guys, and I think they'll go on to do really great things. This is their second studio album now, so they're still early in the days. I expect them to go on and on and on. Their next album after this, I think, will be better still. I expect them to go in an opposite direction, to be dreadfully honest, but we shall see.
I agree with you, Dave, totally. And also, one of the things that's really important about a band like Shame, and you can see it from their first album. I mean, I got into them before they released their first album, as you probably did, and I could see the promise. And firstly, they seemed like a band who were like a proper band, who were like enjoyed being in a band. But not just hanging out in the rehearsal studio and playing, but hanging out together outside the rehearsal studio and stuff. But also, I think there's a lot of overthinking in music at the moment. There's a lot of overthinking about, are we saying the right thing? Are we being politically correct? Is it intellectual enough? And it's all got to be in this whole new woke world that we're in. They don't give a fuck, man. They've got passion that I think a lot of bands now are lacking. And they just have so much fun playing. They're not navel gazers and not going, oh, look at me, I'm emoting here. They're like, I just fucking love this. You know what I mean? They are one band I want to see live. Yeah, they're fantastic. I think they've got a bright future. They've got a really bright future. I really look forward to what they come up with in the third album, because I reckon it'll be blinding.
Tom enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, I did. I think the thing for me is this, like I said earlier on, this year was a really, really good year for experimental rock. I wouldn't call this, doesn't feel like a punk album to me. It does feel like a post-punk album. I think I spent the whole time, a large proportion of my time listening to it and going, I really like it, but Squid sound really similar and better. I really enjoyed this year. I had that, like I said, there were albums from Squid and Lice and Black Country New Road, and this band fits in with that group. And I think they're the worst of that group, in my opinion, but they're still very good. So it got a 7.9 from me, but those other albums are all 8s and 9s.
You see, that's the thing with Shame. I don't think they fit in with any other band. I think one of the reasons I like them is because
they're very like Squid.
They uniquely, I don't know, man. They uniquely stand alone.
Before we get on to our themed comment of the evening from the Butcher's Board.
Oh, God.
Very appropriate tonight, Al.
Oh, man, I'm butchering some fucking shit.
He's butchering the albums. That's what he's doing.
Taking a fucking cleaver to him, aren't I?
Meat cleaver in them all.
I'm going to preempt Al's comment by saying that I didn't really enjoy this album that much. I scored it a 6.4.
How can you score an album you didn't really enjoy a 6.4? That's easily 4 to 5 range. I'm getting decimated on these scores. Yeah, 8 of it, 9.
6.4 was one of my lower scores. I really scored some of these albums quite highly. I understand Shame. I like their previous release. I like post-punk. There's just no fun in this record. It's very much a second album by numbers, and yeah, it does all the things that we want them to, but I don't think they sound like they're having any fun making it, and I'm certainly not having any fun listening to it. There's opportunities because Water in the Well, my notes say, sounds
I wrote
like
the same thing in my notes.
It's kind of going for a David Byrne style. There's no funk. Talking Heads had Tina Weymouth pinning that down, and they're not good enough for me to go to that extra level and become something special. They've even got like a Lindrum on Human for a Minute. I really like that song. That sounded like a New Order jam. So there are good moments on the record, but for me, it was just going a post-punk band going through the motions. And I wrote at the end, I just put, I'd rather be listening to The Cure. Al, you scored this lower than I did. You scored it a 5. So what were your thoughts on this?
5 on the dot. Well, I don't know. I think, because on paper I should probably like this more than most people know. I love punk music. But the thing I like about this, when we say post-punk, which is probably the bits I didn't like as much, like I never really felt like any of the songs ever settled into a groove. I think that's what you mean about the funk.
Yeah.
Like it always felt like everything was on the offbeat, and it never really got to that.
Sketches of ideas.
Yeah, and it never really got to that point where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like it. My main issue with it, honestly, I think it. Well, we talked about Shame last year, but I actually don't think I ever listened to them.
Listen to the first album.
When you guys talked about them, raved about them, I'll go, oh, I should go listen to them then, and then
It's
never
stuck
did.
on your database.
So yeah, it got stuck on my database. So I never actually listened to Shame. Like I thought, on paper they sound like I'd really enjoy him. I don't like his vocal delivery. In all honesty, for me he sounds like a spoken word poet.
It's very
but
John
with music
Cooper Clarke, but not as good.
Yeah, and I wasn't quite as on board about it. And in all honesty, I didn't like how the guitarist played. I didn't like the guitarist. So because of those two things, and because it never really settled into a beat for me, I could never. It just didn't quite reverberate with me, and annoyingly, like some of his ones where as I was listening to it, I felt, why am I not liking this as much as I should? It's on paper, it sounds all right, but it just never got to that point where I was like, I'm really enjoying this. And then the album ended, and I was like, oh, I don't know what to think about that. It was, I think this is one of those bands where I think I'll maybe go back and listen to the first album, or wait in anticipation for the third album. So I think
Songs of Praise is great.
I think I might like it more.
Have the distinction between punk, straight up punk, like Sex Pistols, with post-punk, with things like Magazine and Gang of Four. And I think Shame definitely fall into the post-punk thing than the straight up punk. Al, you've convinced me. It's album shit.
Hey.
On that note,
changed my mind.
In 5th place, with 37.9 points, it's the 4th studio album by English 4-piece rock band Don Broco. It's called Amazing Things. Came out on the 22nd of October 2021 through Sharp Tone Records. Their first single, Manchester Super Reds #1 Fan, was released on released on Annie Mac's Future Sounds on Stevie Wonder's birthday, being May 13th, an important date in anyone's calendar. The single was promoted by the band pretending their Instagram account had been hacked in the days preceding the release, just posting David Beckham. So a very strange story behind the release of this album. I thought this was banging. I scored this an 8.3. I did not like the first track, Gum Shield. I have written in my notes, and this is a bad comment to be on an album that I scored an 8.3, but terrible drowning pool verses, but nice Deftones style chorus. So I thought, oh no, I'm not going to like this at all. It sounds like a bad drowning pool, and it instantly face turns and just becomes one of the most likable, varied, interesting projects. There's a track called Bruce Willis, which starts off as a piano ballad named after. Is it about Die Hard?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
Some of the lyrics.
It is about Die Hard.
It's about Die Hard. It's kind of R&B style on Anaheim, which was a good left turn on the album with a synth outro. That was a bit of an anthemic track. There's ballads like One True Prince, which is more melodic. There's some falsetto on Endorphins. It just goes everywhere, this album. I thought it was a really, really catchy set of songs. I loved it.
Well, I mean, the reason I picked it is because I'm a massive, well, I wouldn't even say I'm a massive Don Broco fan, because I don't like... So basically, the album before this, Technology, is one of my favourite albums of all time. I think it's practically flawless how fun and good it is. And compared to their previous album, Automatic, which was pretty much a straight indie album, like indie pop album, which I actually don't like that much. Technology came out, they added all the random quirk and weirdness, and it made it really good. This album, they've gone even further down that route, and I don't like it as much as the previous album. I was actually apprehensive about putting this on my album of the year, but weirdly, I've listened to it a lot, and I do enjoy it, and every song kind of has grown on me. Like, I think they skate this line between a song being really good and really shit, and you're never quite sure until you've listened to it. You go, actually, no, it was all right, actually. My only issue with this album, we would have got higher, mainly is because they've started doing this thing where they're really overproducing their vocals on the choruses a lot.
I loved the production. I thought it was excellent.
If you listen to the previous album, I think like you can hear their voices a bit more clearly. You can tell they've now got like 20 backing vocals, and for me, it wasn't as good. Like else it would have been higher.
Tame Impala in places.
I think my favourite song is Uber. I think that's quite good. That was my favourite song, and there's enough songs. There's a lot of songs there which made me smile, and it's got some heavy, cool riffs in it. It's got really poppy pop bits. It's got some weird white guy rapping, which is kind of bad, but it kind of works in the song. And yeah, there wasn't really that many bad tracks on the album, really. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, Tom will probably do a better job explaining it.
Tom scored it the highest.
I thought this thing was slammed, to be honest.
8.7.
I know. And I bet you all thought I'd hate it.
What was it you described it to me as, Tom? You said it was a cross between...
It sounds like a cross between Sleep Token and D'Antwort. There's a real D'Antwort thing going on, but there is sort of a subgenre within metal that's going on at the moment, which is bands like, Sleep Token and Tesseract and these sorts of things. It's that sort of it's bands that love that sort of gent style of guitar who are also massively into Deftones doing this sort of sung thing. And this band are doing that in the choruses, but they've got they've got some Enter Shikari-isms going on in there as well. And I really enjoyed it because the lyrics are bollocks through the whole record, right? Let's make no bones about it.
It doesn't have to be good.
I think it's almost to the point it's intentionally bad.
The lyrics are intentionally awful, but
they're catchy.
They touch enough different bases that it keeps me interested the whole way through. A song never outstays its welcome, and the big heavy bits. And when they go heavy, they do it really well. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I've actually listened to it for pleasure several times since.
And to be honest, like if you like it, I really recommend listening to the previous album. But just on another note, like I've seen a lot of bands, and they're my favourite band I've ever seen live. So like they can do it live as well. It is fun. I'm kind of scared to ask what everyone else thinks because I've got a feeling like I wasn't sure people were going to like it.
No, I listened to this album at the worst possible time because I had music fatigue.
Yeah.
I had listened to so much. And to be honest with you, I'm at the point at the moment, I'm even bored of listening to music in general. I'm kind of like, what it is, I go through these periods sometimes where I get bored of listening to music. And what I'll do is I'll spend a week and I won't listen to music. I won't take my iPod to work and I'll just listen to nothing. And I kind of need that at the moment. And I listened to this album. This is one of the last albums I listened to. Actually, I think it was the last album I listened to out of all the picks. And I kind of just was fatigued. And I thought the musicianship was second to none. And I loved the tongue-in-cheek humour of it all. Like the Manchester United one. I thought that was fantastic. But I struggle with like emo-style vocals, and that grated on me. I was just like no, I can't deal with this like sort of thing. I think if I had a break from listening to music and I listened to it, I would probably come to it with fresh ears, and I'd probably give it a much higher score than I did. I think that's the problem I have with this end of year thing, with my time being so limited, is that I get a list of albums to listen to, and I try and listen to them all kind of like in one go. which isn't healthy. And what I need to do is take more of a Tom approach in like listen to them kind of. Spend more time listening to music when it comes out. I just don't have time, man. And I think this album I was totally unfair on.
100%. I need to. I did every time we do this album. I just smashed through it.
Almost did that with Turnstile, where I listened to the first song and I was like, yeah, this is exactly not what I like to hear at the moment. But because I gave it time and I let it sink in, I was like, fuck me, this is amazing. I should have done that with this album. So I've done it a disservice. So I think any opinion that I have on this album is not an accurate opinion right now.
As a wise man once said, just fucking listen to it, man.
What did Dave think?
Dave scored it a 7. So by the way Dave scores code, a 7 is a very respectful.
Yeah, Don Brocco I quite liked, but it was just a bit too similar to new metal-y sort of stuff for me. The bass one reminded me a little bit of Core. Wasn't really for me 100%, but yeah, as you say, 7 was respectable. I liked it. The musicianship was good. The rock style was nice. I've got no issues against it. It's just wasn't 100% for me. It was a little bit too on the new metal side.
Further into the top 5, and in 4th place with 38 points is the 4th studio album by British rapper Little Simz. Released on the 3rd of September 2021. The album's called Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. It was released by Age 101 Music and AWOL. The album succeeds the Mercury Prize nominated album Grey Area, the album that she put out before in 2019. It's got 5 singles from it: Introvert, Woman, Rolling Stone, I Love You, I Hate You, and Point and Kill, which is a absolute banger. The album is produced by the frequent collaborator Inflow. It includes guest appearances from Cleo Sol, who was the singer on those tremendous Salt records last year, and a Bon.
Yeah, this album was unfortunately not my pick, although I wish it was. But I think it's a refreshing change in a kind of long line of subpar UK hip hop that's been going on for quite a while now. But it's her 4th studio album. I think it's a very succinct start to finish journey. It had a message, it delivered it. It finished up at the end. I think her rapper style is very clever. She's got multiple different ways of phrasing her voice, and the music complements that. And I think it's just one of the better albums by far from this year, and it really deserving of this place. But yeah, I think it's a succinct message, and I needed to listen to it fully multiple times to really understand it on a deeper level. But I think she's a great MC. I think not only just one of the best female UK rappers, but just one of the best rappers full stop that are making music at the moment in the world. So yeah, props to Little Simz.
I listened to this and I got it. It was a kind of a really good listen. But I would at first listen I would have scored it probably about a 7, something like that. What really turned me on to the album, she did a Tiny Desk concert, and it was phenomenal. And she's dripping with charisma, and she's so cool. And she, when you're studying the lyrics, it's a very introspective. It's all about her formative years and how she's grown as an artist and how it's affected her career and the decisions she's made. It's a very personal album, but it never stops being fun. And I think that's the most important element for me, because some of them are bangers. I mean, the quick 1-2 punch of Point and Kill and Fear No Man. I'm all about that. It's funky. It's based on it's got this kind of African rhythm to it. It's really funky. It was good live. She did that kind of that she went for that vibe in the concert that I saw. Tom, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I feel like I might have listening back to this album today. I might have underscored it slightly. It probably wouldn't have gone up enough to move it up a place. But
So you scored it at 7.8.
Yeah, I think I would. It's up into the low 8s for me.
That's probably
realistically
not enough to.
No, probably I don't think it would be. But it's. I love the first track on this album, Introvert. That I really like that track.
Orchestral swelling on that is amazing.
Yeah, but it's got an interesting structure. It's got a chorus. It does a lot of different things. There are a couple of moments I don't love. So I think Rolling Stone is the weakest track on the album.
Oh no, I love that one.
Rolling Stone stands out. It almost sounds like that was written and recorded years ago, and it doesn't quite fit into the rest of the album.
It feels the most trap out of all of the songs for me. That one's got the most kind of modern trap elements. I thought it slapped. Two people who were not so positive on this album. Nobody scored it lower than a 6. The person who scored it 6 was Villain of the Evening, Al.
Fucking hell. I didn't know at the start of this episode everyone was just going to go, right, so 8 out of 10 is going to be the lowest, yeah? Cool, let's go.
He's even got his evil villain cat on his lap.
Yeah. I will adjust my scores for $1 million.
To be honest, I think I was talking to Tom about this album actually, because me and Tom always talk about albums when we're not supposed to.
Oh, you've got a secret album chat, have you? Oh, nice.
We got a secret.
Thanks for the invite.
We don't give each other scores, but we definitely let each other know how it's going. Martyn, I'm slagging off your band, so I can't have you in it. I think her her rapping was brilliant. It was really good. This is one of those ones where this is what comes back to what Martyn said. I'm kind of going through a rap fatigue at the moment myself. And her rapping was very good, very good. I didn't quite like a lot of the backbeats, and I found the Disney stuff a little irritating. And by the end of the album, I was kind of a bit fed up of her telling me.
Album.
Yeah, and I was a bit fed up by the end of us telling us that she needs to ring her mum and sister more. I'm like, okay, I get it, whatever. It was on one of those days as well where I was in a bit of a shitty mood, but I had to get through, and honestly, I think on another day this could probably go as high as an 8. I may have to listen to it again, because what I did I really liked. It's just, I don't know, she kept, it was one of those ones where she kept telling me about the struggle, but because I don't know who she was, I have no idea who this artist was before this, so I didn't know the struggle. So, until I think it was track 3 or 4, I can't remember which one, when she actually says she's been stabbed, and from there it went from what sounded like a 20-year-old kid telling me about the struggle, which she isn't. She's 28 or something, which I didn't know at the time. I looked her up afterwards, but it felt like a 20-year-old person telling me about the struggle, and I'm like, well, what? But the struggle didn't seem that authentic to me. It just felt like, I've been making music for a while in my bedroom. That was the struggle. I was like, well, that's not struggling. That's just, not being recognised. There's a difference. But until she said, she's been stabbed, and I was like, all right, so she's obviously gone through some live shit, and then she spent the rest of the album whinging that she doesn't ring her mum enough. And I was like, well, ring your mum then. Fuck off. That's me being at my harshest with it, but overall, I thought she's an amazing rapper. She's very, very good. Some of the flows, I've never heard anything kind of like it. It's very unique. I found some of the choruses a bit annoying, and I just didn't like the Disney bits between.
Do you know what? That's the actual thing about it. That I listened to the album, and I love putting the musicality aside. I thought the album instrumentally was almost perfect. I loved every second of it, but there's not really nobody really stands out in the rap field for me personally. I just kind of, but it might just be fatigue, and I think everybody wants to be a rapper these days. Everybody, and it's easy to do if you can write lyrics and you can have a rhythm in your voice. It doesn't matter whether you've got a decent voice or not. You can rap, and it's almost like, to me, it's like when you had rock music and you had virtuoso guitar players. Suddenly, you had a million fucking. And it's happening now, actually, on YouTube and TikTok. You've got these virtuoso guitar players who know how to play really, really well, but it's just saturated. It's every fucker is doing it. And the thing is, I don't want to take away from Little Sims's like background and everything, but I hear that in real life through like my volunteer work and stuff. So it's not telling me anything new.
Just wanted to close off the entry by just saying that there were several artists that I think of when I listen to this record. She reminds me of Nina Simone. She reminds me of Lauryn Hill. She gives me Ghostface Killer vibes because of her creative kind of storytelling, and Kendrick Lamar. She's got that kind of that interesting cadence and delivery that he has. We'll move on because now it's time for the top three. In third place with 40 points is the third studio release from British electronic band Jungle, Loving in Stereo. This was
so glad this made the top 10. So glad.
I scored it an 8.8, which would actually make it my joint second favorite album of the year. It was this is one of those records where my notes just sound like the scrawlings of a madman. There's references to Roxy Music. There's the saxophone, Music Soul Child.
Do you mind if I just jump in? Yeah. I mean, it's the third album from them. I've got all of them on vinyl. I think they're just great production skills. They're really talented sort of... I mean, a lot of people will criticise them being sort of advert bed music, but I think that the sort of Royksop or 07 or sort of that sort of ilk of their day, they're just really, really good, kind of funky instrumental tracks. It's an album that I can put on in the background. If people don't know who they are, they'll like it or compliment it. Even if people aren't into music or they're not sure if they've heard any of the band's previous works, I just think they're great. This is no exception. I don't think it's the best of the bunch as far as albums are concerned, but they're all of high quality. They're one of those bands where you don't even need to listen to it before buying it. I just auto-buy as soon as I realise they're releasing a release.
I think that's giving it far too much credit.
I kind of agree.
This is one that I overscored. I listened back to this today and I've overscored it by 2. I don't like this album very much at all. I quite liked it.
So what did you give it?
I gave it a
then?
7 and I should have given it a 5.
So you think...
Yeah, I didn't like it.
You see, I gave it a really high score, and I think Dave kind of, when he mentioned 07, that was the band that immediately came to mind, and that's why I loved it. It's just like, you don't have to think about it, it just makes you feel good. And I like, that's the sort of music I want to listen to right now.
Yeah. I've written on my I've written on my notes.
Amazing
it's clearly
album.
well done, but I feel like I've heard this song 1,000 times before.
Yeah, it's been done
The strings
before,
are pretty
but-
and the vocals are well done.
You see, I could listen to 07, but I know 07 so well, and this was like almost like rediscovering 07 again.
I massively prefer 07. I enjoy 07 and Air, and I didn't really enjoy this.
This sounded like a road trip in the summer sunshine, and that's what I needed to hear. You know, I needed to hear that. It's fucking perfect. It's an absolutely incredible album. Love it, Dave. I'm right on board with that. Wish I'd heard it earlier.
Yeah, and Al, Tom stole your villain hat because you quite like this. It's 7.7.
This is the album which got me back on track of the rut I was in with a lot of the music. Because unfortunately, I listened to a lot of all of the ambient stuff, it seemed. I was picking the albums at random, but I was listening to all the sort of ambient stuff back to back just by accident. So by the end of it, I was so sick of I just wanted a fucking drum beat and a cool chorus and a good, uplifting songs. I was doing cooking for making my dinner for the week. And I was just listening to it in the kitchen, and I was dancing in the kitchen. It got me back on the horse, music-wise, listening to it. It got me my enthusiasm back a bit. Because, I didn't think there was a bad song on the album. I thought everything was well done. I thought they did on this album it kind of, I know it's probably not the same genre, but it felt to me it's exactly what I thought Silk Sonic should have been.
Okay.
You know, like it's like upbeat, like you know when a song starts and like some songs they slowly build in. All of Tom's songs,
not all.
But like I found that every song on this, within the first 5 seconds, you know when you go, oh yeah, like you know instantly this is going to be a bit of a good one. And I felt like every song did that for me, and it kind of, maybe it wasn't overly clever with the songs. It was, you know, it was very straight. It was just straight beats the whole way. It wasn't particularly overly clever, but I think it was just fun, and I really, really enjoyed it. Like, at the end of it, I was like, I gave it, I think it was a 7.9.
Scored it a 7.7.
Okay, I think I was going to give it 7.9, but it was too close to the albums I put forward, which I preferred. So I had to drop it. So I had to drop it down 0.2.
But attack scoring there.
Well, you know what it's like. I prefer this album to this album, so you can't have the same scores.
The bands must suffer
down.
to our own personal game.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was really good. I think it was my top score of all the stuff that wasn't my stuff. I think that.
Great choice, Dave, and thank you for choosing it, because it's something I'm going to be listening to now for a while. I think it's exactly what I need in music right now.
Oh, well, I'll have to give them a go then. It will not get deleted like half the other stuff I had to listen to.
Into the top 2, and in second place with 40.8 points. Now, this one, it is the 6th studio album from a 3-piece band. The album is called Wild Type Droid. It was released on December the 3rd, 2021. It was self-produced, primarily by singer-guitarist Ken Andrews. You've got bass from Greg Edwards, drums from Kelly Scott. They are Failure. Martyn.
Well, look, we're all tired and we've got work tomorrow, and I could spend hours talking about Failure. All I'll say is,
so I shall.
No, I won't. I'm absolutely obsessed with this band, and like they're pretty much the only band I listen to at the moment. I'm obsessed with Ken Andrews as a producer as well as a musician, and this album took me by surprise. I didn't know it was coming out, but because they're one of the very, very, I follow about 5 bands on social media, you know, like Pearl Jam and that, but Gigolo Galleon and
Hashtag Gigolo Galleon.
Hashtag Gigolo Galleon. But yeah, it just came up, and it was like new album coming out, new single, and I was into Failure for a while, but not really into them. I liked them, but didn't love them. And then I heard their single Headstand, and I was like, I don't know, something clicked, and they are now my favourite band, probably of all time. Like, I don't know, there's something special about them. I think with this album, a bit like when I was talking about with Mogwai, where they have progressed gradually through the years, and I think it helps that Ken Andrews is the producer, and he's incredible. He's worked with 9 Inch Nails, Jim Eat World, Paramore. He's well respected and well skilled and stuff. I think he's driven the Failure sound through time, which with each consecutive album, and their big album obviously is Fantastic Planet, and then they split up, and then they got back together. But I think every album after that it just gets gradually better in their career. And I think that one of the beautiful things about this album is that, firstly, it's quite concise. It's quite short compared to their other stuff, so it's accessible. And also it retains the stuff from their really early days. I remember you, Dan, saying like their new stuff sounds better than their old stuff, and it does, way better. But it still retains a lot of their sound from like their first albums, and that's down to Ken Andrews. Even Ken says like he doesn't really like the sound of the first albums and stuff. But like, it's Dave falling off his chair.
Dave fell off his chair. I'm trying to keep it straight. No one noticed, Dave.
So yeah, to wrap this up, I just think if you're in a band and you wanna have a career, I think Failure are one of those bands that it's not Ken Andrews' first thing, and it's not Greg Edwards either, because he's in Autolux, and I got into Failure through Autolux, and it's like it's a beautiful thing to see how it could have been just his thing, the band, but it isn't. He's doing all this other stuff as well. but still able to produce such incredible music. So yeah, I mean, this album's touched my heart in ways I can't explain. The band have, and I don't know. I don't know when it will wear off, but I hope it doesn't.
You said earlier that lockdown's been a bad thing, and it's shown in kind of the art that's been made. But I think the song "Submarines" is, I think, specifically about lockdown. There's lines about.
I thought it was actually about submarines. Let's just ruin that song for me.
And
God.
yeah, it's not about submarines. I think it's about lockdown. So I think that I would like to present this song, Submarines, as by Failure, as a counter argument to what you were saying earlier.
Well,
just to be the most smarmy bastard that's ever.
But then also, pretty much most 98% of the lyrics are written by Greg Edwards, who went through quite a terrible heroin addiction through like Failure's career, and a lot of the lyrics are kind of written in the frame of a heartbreak and like breaking down relationships and stuff, but it's not actually about that. It's actually about like the kind of like loneliness of addiction, and that's why their early stuff is all about space rock and everything. It's all about being lost in space and things like that, because that's how addiction feels. You're alone and you're away from your home and stuff. And this album, they themselves said it's almost like them coming back down to earth, because they're all clean now and they're all like professionals and stuff. And it really does feel like that, but that darkness is still there. That darkness, that loneliness, that kind of like that feeling of hopelessness of being in addiction is still in the lyrics there, but they're just framed in a kind of more like, I mean, their most famous song, Stuck on You, everyone thinks is about like, you know, you've broken up with someone and, you know, you miss them so much and I'm stuck on you. It's not. It's about stuck on heroin. That's what it's about. And, yeah, it's pretty dark, man. But like, I think also what I love about them as well is like in most like 90s alternative rock, which is where they come from, is that it's all guitar based, when actually the main driving force behind the band is about the bass and the drums, and the guitar is mainly like kind of arpeggiated shoegazy stuff over the top. So that's influenced my playing a lot. That's what I like to do a lot in my band, is like kind of put the guitar over the top rather than having the bass line riff. Whereas a lot of, like, as we know, you know, Nirvana and Tool and all the rest of it, it's all about the main guitar riff. They don't do that. The main riff is all about the bass, and the bass tones are incredible on the album. And there's a lot of baritone guitar on the album, Tom would be pleased to know. I just think it's incredible. I'm going to shut up because I've
got a very simple thing to say about this. I do really like this album, but my notes just right. All my notes say is, this sounds like Built to Spill.
Well, I don't know, man. Built to Spill were kind of a bit more guitar heavy.
More, but the vocals start.
There's way more guitar.
The vocals and the melodies are very, very similar, that's not a criticism, by the way. I love Built to Spill.
It's 90s alt rock, isn't it? You know, at the end of the day.
To summarise my notes, which will give us insight into A, exactly what this sounds like for the listener, and B, exactly how much of a wanker I am.
You have to explain this.
Grunge with alt/space rock riffage. Yes, I used the word riffage in a note that could have been only intended for myself, and then chose to read it to the public.
Well, they have been described as space rock throughout the whole career. That's what they described themselves as, you know, space rock.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with space rock. I have a problem with me writing the word riffage.
Yeah, riffage is pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, fuck you, Dan.
Get your cleaver out, Al.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to say about Failure?
Yeah, with Failure, I enjoyed the music. I gave it a very medium rate score because it wasn't really something that blew me away, but it wasn't something that disgusted me either. It was just, to my ear, fairly middle of the road. So, I'll probably just bow out of this one, to be dreadfully honest, as I don't know much about the band, and the music didn't really blow me away enough to do much research on it, to be dreadfully honest.
I obviously, because we're listening to a lot of albums, I was in a short period, I was just fitting them in. As I said, I've listened to even some of the Littles.
you gave it a 7.8.
Yeah, there you go. It's pretty good. I thought it was. I will listen to it again, and I will probably listen to other stuff. That's what
I would if I were you. You'd enjoy it.
Your highest score from band albums that weren't your own picks.
Oh, that's pretty good then.
You'd love the drumming on their earlier stuff, man. The drummer is incredible. Scott Kelly is one of the best drummers I've ever heard.
I'm getting increasingly worried that NoFX isn't going to be number one.
It might be.
I called number one in June.
Well, I think we'll put people out of their misery, because in first place, with 41.4 points, is one of my picks, and I think everybody knows at this point what is number one. So for those uninitiated at home, this is the third album from hardcore punk band Turnstile. The album is called Glow On. It was released on the 27th of August via Roadrunner Records. It was recorded by American producer Mike Elizondo, Mike Elizondo, who co-wrote In the Club and The Real Slim Shady, so he's got form. It's the first release to include a featured artist, so it's got guest appearances from British singer-songwriter and producer Blood Orange, who is one of my favourite artists from recent years. It's incredible. So Dave, you may interject, because I'm assuming it's going to be positive.
So yeah, this album by Turnstile was just a complete sideswipe for me. I know the band from going to hardcore gigs and stuff, and people that have worked like in Ocean City Hardcore and other bands that I've seen live were talking about Turnstile. My friends that were into hardcore telling me a lot about it. So I knew it was going to be an album anyway that I'd want to listen to. But I really wasn't expecting what was there. It's got like synth pop, it's kind of 80s throwback, there's kind of like almost SoundCloud sort of rappy tracks, there's straight up hardcore tracks, there's rock tracks, there's also, so I think it's a real breath of fresh air for a genre that was getting quite stale, really. A lot of hardcore suffers from what they call brocore, which is kind of like chug, 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 punk drums, trying to be as masculine as possible, and this was like a softer kind of feminine side for it, and just more diversity and more outlets for different genres to come in, and it was just, yeah, it was really great. It's a really deserving album for album of the year, and I've got absolutely no qualms. I'm not going to argue with anybody over it. It's not my pick, but I'm very happy with Dan who's chosen to put it forward as the number one album this year. I'm very happy to see it there.
It was a surprise for me, because usually I listen to it, and I listened to the first song and the second song, and it was like kind of straight up, kind of fast drumming, hardcore punk, and I was kind of like, yeah, I can see where this is going, but I did not expect what was going to come. And I listened to the whole album, and I was like, my God, what have I just listened to right here? I was like, kind of, fucking hell, man! There was so much to deep dive into in the album. I just had to listen to it again. This was probably the only album on the list that I listened to. I've listened to several times. I introduced my girlfriend to it last night, and she was like, "Yeah, there's a new Turnstile fan," and like, because she's into all that stuff. What I love about it is like, basically, just on the punk side of it, of taking all the other genres out, is there's one thing they do that I fucking love in hardcore, is when they go really fast and it's like, boom, 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 like, double speed drumming. and then it just slows down, and you get that half-speed drumming and the chuggy guitar riffs.
Yeah, it's that
and
bit
it goes
when
junk, junk, junk.
it's that nasty bit.
I'm into that. You just go, yes, fucking yes, man, and you get into it. It's like, I love that contrast that you get. They're so good at that. They're all great musicians as well.
There are some problems. So Mike Elizondo ruined Kill Switch Engage, and he ruined Avenged Sevenfold, and he nearly ruins this with the amount he compresses the guitar tone. I don't think he's that good. He's done some very good stuff in hip hop that sold really well. I don't like his production on this. I think this album works despite his production, not because of it. That's one thing.
But doesn't that say more about the musicianship? Because I think the musicianship is so good, and it's all about the band. The production is like kind of secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not. I think at times Brendan Yates, the singer, dips into the Perry Farrell.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
No. Again, I'm not.
That's a strength, not a weakness.
I'm not. And actually, I think Dan's going to hate it when I say this. I think Blood Orange, particularly on Lonely Desires at the end, I think he is unnecessary.
I think you're unnecessary, Tom.
I knew you'd dislike it when I said that.
Blood Orange, let me just explain for a sec now you've brought Blood Orange up. I think the appearances on the track,
Alien Love
Call and Lonely Desires, he is this alien voice that I've been listening to since his album Cupid Deluxe in 2013, which was possibly my album of the year that year. So check that out. Because I think he's incredible, and what he does on this is, because the album could have outstayed its welcome. It's 35 minutes long, which is the perfect length for a punk album, but it could have outstayed its welcome. But I thought those two appearances just made it engaging enough to make it almost a perfect album.
Like everyone seems to like it.
No problem with the Alien Love Call one. I just don't. I don't think I really liked Lonely Desires much. I will say the bass player is fucking class. But just throwing that in there. The bass player is very good and takes the lead vocal on the penultimate track, and he does that really well.
The problem is everyone here is coming from it like it's like a masterpiece. I'm coming from this album where I was expecting to like it a lot more than I did. Because it's my genre of music at the moment. This is my favourite genre of music at the moment. And everyone is basically saying this album is the tits. And quite frankly, it was a very good album. I did really enjoy it. But it felt to me like the things that made it more accessible, and the reason why it's blown up so much, and the reason why they're playing on like US talk shows at the moment. Yeah, those are the bits where I didn't quite like as much. If you know what I mean? I felt like, there's two types of hardcore bands apparently I've now discovered, where one sound a bit more alt rocky with their riffs and one sound a bit metal with their riffs. I kind of prefer the more thrash crossover hardcore than I do to the rock side of the hardcore, if you know what I mean. And this is very much planted in the alt rock level of hardcore, even down to the vocals. It wasn't as harsh. The bits I loved, like the bits I liked, I absolutely loved. Like, Martyn said about, when like you get that, when they played a good riff but then slow it down, and then you get that look in, and you literally feel it, and you go, oh, that's disgusting. Yeah, you're like, I love that feeling, and that's what hardcore does the best, and that's why I fucking love the genre so much. But there wasn't quite enough of that for me, and I felt like, I can't remember what a heavy song. There's a double time heavy song on the album when just when you think this isn't quite hardcore enough for me, they have the quicker one about halfway through. I think it was Wild Worlds, but there's one song where it felt like it was coming in for like a second verse. I can't remember what it is, but it felt like it was coming in for a second verse. And I was like, okay, yeah, give me more. And then it kind of stopped it and just phased out into ambience. Yeah, and a part of me was thinking, I didn't want that to fade to ambience. I didn't want like a dreamscape at that point. I wanted that song to keep playing. And I felt this had a lot of that for me, where it was... I did enjoy it. I swear, I really liked the album, but it was just... There were enough little things like that throughout the album which didn't push it above the score I gave it. I gave it, I think, 7.5. There was enough little things where... All the little things there is the reason why it's more popular than all the albums I fucking listen to, and rightfully so maybe. And the reason why it's more like people are more accessible, but those little things as a whole were the reason I didn't like it. Like for example, like I would prefer to listen to Drain from last year. That for me, that's a better hardcore band. But no one else on earth is going to agree with me, so I'm okay with that. But I think I will listen to that older stuff, to be honest, because it might be a bit more like that.
But that, I think Al, you've kind of like, I think with this particular band, I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah!
I really enjoyed the Drain album from last year, but it was what it was, and it was kind of like straight up, like it's hardcore all the way through. But I think what I liked about this album was you did not know what to expect. It's like you've got this song going on and it's hardcore, and then it just stops, and then you go, well, that was a bit of a surprise, and I liked that. I liked that kind of unpredictability of the album, and the fact that like nothing overstayed its welcome. Everything, all the songs were the perfect length. I don't know who was responsible for arranging the songs, but they're a genius, because they kind of went, that's enough. We've said what we needed to say, move on. What are we going to do next? And I think that's what I like. One of the many things I like about the album is like you have these ideas, but then the ideas never get boring because they move on to the next thing really quickly. And I don't know, man. Like they have so many ideas that if they let the ideas drag on, it would become too muddy, and you'd end up with a 2-hour album basically.
But I remember when I was watching the music videos that they pretty much stuck 3 songs in a row as a 15-minute short film on YouTube, pretty much. Like it's basically 3 music videos in a row, and it was really cool. But I was reading through the comments, and there were people saying, "I'm 50 and grew weary of this genre. This has got me back into music. Like this is exactly what music needed," and that was overwhelming the majority of what people are saying. So
it's got me back into post-hardcore. I mean, I've started getting back into post-hardcore again because of this album. I love it that much. In fact, I'll say like this is a band I would like to be in. I'd love to be the guitar player in this band.
I think I would. Like, I think it sounds cool.
Fucking amazing.
And I would love to be in a band like this. But it was just, for me, I couldn't give any higher because it's, as far as I'm concerned, this is entry-level hardcore, and I like more hardcore. That's it. There's definitely a formula to winning our Band of the Year. It's got to be a bit rocky, but
it's well-deserved, yeah.
Yeah, like...
Failure should have been number 1, but this is all right, I'll take it.
Worthy winners, I think, Turnstile. That was it. That is our big Season 3 premiere. Let us know what you think. What are your albums of the year? We are available on all forms of social media. Get our name out there as much as you can. Tell a friend, the Cacophony Sessions, a shit podcast where people just have shit opinions.
I think it's a great podcast with great opinions, actually, Daniel.
There we go. Recommendation from Alex. Tell your friends, listen to the podcast. Go on, do it. Go on, tell your friends. Tell them now. Text them. We will be back in the next episode, in which I have decided that we are going to do shit show and tell. So we are going to be tasked with bringing our 3 worst musical YouTube videos to the table for our discussion. Tune into that next time. I've been Dan Whitell. This has been the Cacophony Sessions. Turnstile have been our winners, and you've been warned. Stay funky.
Love you, bye.
Bye. So how bad did the rest of mine do then?